Hi, I'm Jack Baruzzini, and you're listening to The Secrets of Stargate, where we talk about the hidden meanings and deeper layers found in the Stargate movies, TV series, and more. And joining me today are Jeff Haecker. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, Jack.
And Lisa Jones. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Jack.
And Victor Lambs. Hey, Victor.
Hey, Jack.
Today we are discussing the 15th episode of Season 8 of SG1, Citizen Joe. Before we jump into that, I did want to say that James Earl Jones, as of recording, has passed a few days ago. He was the voice of the Unos on the Thor's Hammer episode. He was also a Catholic, which I recently discovered, so may he rest in peace. And he was definitely a giant in sci-fi. There's that other Star franchise that we can't talk about here, but he was big.
Meteor Man?
Yeah, I think that's the one.
Yeah.
So we remember his, definitely a big loss. He was also Mufasa, which as a 90s kid, that was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Today we get this fun episode that is considered a clip show, although I would not even consider it a clip show. It's about a mild-mannered barber who gets all of SG1 beamed into his head. He turns these into science fiction stories. Eventually he discovers that all of this is true. And I am saying this outline because I completely forgot to write one, so we're just going to roll with it.
There you go. Stargate is a documentary, after all. Yeah,
That's right.
That's what I assumed this whole time.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on this episode, Lisa?
I love this episode. It is so fun. I was watching it and I found myself just smiling like a little schoolgirl, especially at the beginning clips. The it is a clip show. So this clips that they're showing, gosh, I love the flashback to season 1, season 2. They picked some great episodes to highlight. And then the way that they poked fun at themselves, throughout this episode, it's like they were giving the fans a little, I hear you, I see you, a little cheering on, like where they're like, oh, they saved the world again. That's getting repetitive, where they're like, oh, I only read these episodes or these stories and they weren't the best ones. There's just so many fun little things. I love this episode. So every time we talk about clip shows, I always want to say, but not Citizen Joe. Like Citizen Joe is amazing.
And I feel like the clips were brief enough that
Mm-hmm.
it didn't feel like a clip show to me. Like they all made sense within the context of what was going on.
Right, because they gave you just enough that they assumed you already knew what happened. It wasn't trying to fill you in on the storyline, just enough to show you how, I just totally forgot his name, Joe, how he was, seeing it and relating to it. That was just enough.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, this one's a lot of fun, and I was a little sad a couple weeks ago when I thought this was the next one, but then it was full alert. So, but yeah, this one is great. Yeah, a lot of fun. Dan Castellano is great as Joe. He plays a great, barber, kind of down on his luck guy, kind of family man, whatnot. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun seeing the clips. Kind of the memories, and it was very meta, and they were referencing themselves, like, hasn't SG1 saved the world 5 times already? How many times have we defeated Apophis and that kind of thing? So that was always great. And then I just love at the end when O'Neill reveals that he's been having these flashes for 6 or 7 years of being a barber, of bowling, and they're like, haven't you talked about this before? Or haven't I talked about this before? No, you didn't. Oh, I thought I did. I had to. And he's been seeing this whole time, and he's like, it was relaxing. So just a great episode. A lot of fun.
Going to make everyone wonder about all their mundane daydreams. Are you actually psychically linked to someone else? What about you, Victor?
Yeah, I really like this episode too. I mean, clip shows were necessary evils. They were cheap to make. They allowed the show's creators to bring the audience up to speed right before doing like a monumental 2-parter, which I think is one of the things we get next. But obviously inspired to bring in Dan Castellaneta as Joe. Richard Dean Anderson was a huge Simpsons fan. So was Joseph Malazzi at the time. I understand Malazzi's office was kind of a shrine to Homer Simpson at the time as well. And from the commentary, this was the only time that Richard Dean Anderson was actually starstruck by one of the guest stars that they brought on. But yeah, really good performances all around. Even from the supporting cast, the characters in Joe's life. I like how they were fair to Joe even as he descended into madness, but a good way to reintroduce clips of the old shows and have some fun along the way. At least, as you said, kind of poking fun at the writers and the writing process, and even the way people say Gould or Gould.
Yes.
And they say, why don't you just call them like snakeheads?
Yeah.
Or the difference between Anubis and Apophis.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Stargate always does meta humor very well. Like you can tell that they don't think so highly of themselves that they cannot take a joke, and they seem to be very in tune with what people find funny. And
Yeah.
even if it's something that was unintentionally funny, like the way the Gould are pronounced, or all the different idiosyncrasies, or even like making jokes about like Teal'c's early makeup where he was like gold dusted.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Robert C. Cooper threw that joke in about the you're not gold anymore, or didn't she used to be gold? Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked how they were referencing like the episodes that weren't as well received, and they didn't. I was hoping they would mention One False Step, but I don't think they did.
No.
But it was just great how they could kind of poke fun at themselves, and they say, why did you send in those stories to the publishers? Those weren't your better ones.
Yeah. And I love the reference to the Furlings. Oh, I'm sure we're going to have many more of those. And the one guy says, they remind me of furry things like little Ewoks. And that was so funny because that's exactly what the fandom was saying at the time. It's like the Furlings were Ewoks, and I'm sure we're going to get them. And no, we didn't.
Never. But I did also like the comment about Hathor. It's like, they didn't like that one. That one was gold.
Yeah. Yeah. So, just a note on the casting here is they cast, Dan Castellaneta, can never say his name, but because he was or is still Homer Simpson, and was a favorite of the writers of the show. And then they brought him on. I guess he had also been in Second City as well. And when they brought him in, they were like, well, we haven't cast the part of your wife yet. Who do you see in that role? And, he said, well, I see, can you hire Deborah Thacker, who had also been in Second City and had been in a lot of Christopher Guest movies. She was in Waiting for Guffman and The Mighty Wind, those sort of mockumentary type movies. And so she is excellent in this, as well as Joe's long-suffering wife, Charlene, who puts up with it for a very long time. I think almost 5 or 6 years before she finally takes the kid and goes to live with mother. But just the two of them have a really good, kind of relationship. It never devolves into like sitcom, broad humor. It's still, there's still like an emotional center there. Even as things get pretty crazy between them.
I feel like as science fiction nerds, at one point or other, we've probably had our spouse get a little bit exasperated at us talking about whatever show we're watching. So kind of feel that there.
Except for me, my husband is my husband is a much bigger sci-fi nerd than I am, so I'm good.
Yeah, and if you've ever done like NaNoWriMo, which is the National Novel Writing Month in November, then you're probably familiar with their spouse saying like, what, you're writing again? It's 2 a.m. Yeah, and apparently he's writing on like vintage laptops, at the time. This is 2004, 2005, and so they had to go back, like what laptops were people using 7 years ago, and they tried to source, laptops of that era and stuff. I don't know that anybody noticed, but they did make an effort to do that.
As a tech nerd, I appreciate that attention to detail.
Yeah.
So I think that they usually use like Dell 5100s, you can tell, but I did not catch what he was working on.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those late 90s weird things that look kind of like a Romulan console from The Next Generation or something. But
Strange toilet seat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like the whole small town vibe of where he works. Like, I feel like that also is something that seems pretty fantastical these days, as a guy working as a barber and being able to pay his mortgage still. But
And for 2 employees, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to
2
say,
full-time
I could understand
employees,
having the other barber, but having I think his name was Gordy. I guess his job is to clean, but
Just
no one's ever
sweep.
in there.
And the idea that people come in and they just chat and read the paper and hear these stories and just very laid back and spend time. Does that still happen at barbershops?
I would hope so. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, rampant inflation kind of killed, a lot of that. But yeah, no, they actually did rent out an actual barbershop for the barbershop scenes. But a lot of the other interior scenes, like the house and then the back room, the barbershop, they had recently acquired Bridge Studios, which had been used previously for the show Dead Like Me, which is one of those supernatural like comedy type shows. And so the kids' bedroom, the kitchen, I think the living room were all already set up as like kitchens, bedrooms, and living rooms, and they just kept them and redressed them a little bit to shoot in there. So it's kind of cool to see them reuse sets from other shows that way.
I mean, they had the Blade 2 set. They could have used that.
They could have, yeah. Yeah, I don't think they did in this particular one, but
Nope. I thought it was interesting how, like, a lot of the clips they showed, they were a lot shorter than you generally get in a clip show. Like, they didn't really.
Yeah.
I feel like if you didn't already know what the clip was from and the context of the clip, it wasn't going to really bring you up to speed on what was going on. It felt like it was very much just like, remember this for the fans, kind of a nostalgia thing, but done tastefully.
Yeah, it was very much to just say, now we're doing this, and this is how he's going to describe it, just to prompt your memory and say, oh yeah, I do remember when Jack had the knowledge of the ancients in his head twice, and had to meet the Asgard to get it taken out. And that's all you need as a fan, is just kind of that reminder. And then you can see how he has to explain it to his friends and his spouse and his kid and stuff.
Actually, I was saying that clip shows are usually cost-saving measures, and that this one, because of your guest star and because they did so many other shots, with him and his family and the barbershop and everything else, did they really save a lot of money on this episode? Because it felt like a real episode.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, they did mention it was a cost-saving thing, but I can't imagine they, they saved much in the end. They didn't have to turn on the Stargate, which saves them a lot of money. They didn't have to render any new gold ships or anything, so that saves them money as well on visual effects. But yeah, probably.
I also like how when they're talking about the different stories he's written, when his wife is like, kind of at the first time she's had it with him, and he's like, have you read like any of them? And she starts listing the stories, and they're all the actual episode titles. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
And then I like the car salesman guy who was kind of the only customer. I think he was the only customer we ever see. And then, everyone in town is getting tired of him telling these stories, and it was almost kind of like a meta thing of oh, we're in season 8, and we've probably lost some people along the way, because there's the show wasn't as good as it used to be in a lot of ways. So I don't know if they talked about it in the commentary, but I was wondering when they were talking about that, I was like, oh, are they talking about themselves here and saying, yeah, we've lost some viewers along the way.
Not that specifically, but the writer for this, Damien Kindler, did mention that it was a lot of humor at the expense of the writers more than the show, and what it is to be a writer. All the rejection letters from the sci-fi magazines and people not understanding what they do, and their families not really understanding. And one thing I do like is that they worked in Wormhole Extreme, because you're wondering, it's like, well, didn't we already do kind of one where there's stories about the Stargate program out there? How is that going to be if Joe finds out about Wormhole Extreme? And we do find it, and he's he's very appalled that they've stolen his idea for a show, when in fact we know the secret is that Marty has knowledge of the Stargate program on his own and is has written the show there. And then of course it gets canceled after one episode, so Joe's lawsuit doesn't really go anywhere.
I loved his face.
Yeah,
I loved his wannabe cynical teenage son talking about that. There's just no creativity in the world anymore.
That was a great rant.
Yeah, Andy grows up quick because he goes from being 5 or 6, and then like 2 or 3 years later, he's a teenager. So
Maybe
I thought that
a
was
Jaffa.
pretty funny. Yeah, maybe he's a Jaffa too.
That's a whole commentary on parenthood, isn't it?
Yeah, but the framing device here is that he finds a communication stone, which will become more of a device in season 9 of SG1, and then becomes like the entire premise for the show in Stargate universe is these communication stones that can link two people over great distances. Finds one at a garage sale, and they do explain what it's doing at the garage sale, but it's what's kind of giving him these glimpses into SG1's missions. And so he knows about Colonel O'Neill. Eventually, there is that picture of Colonel O'Neill and almost at the time, almost Vice President Kinsey, shaking hands after O'Neill stops the assassination attempt. So he knows that there is a real O'Neill. He's starting to put it together, and it all culminates with him realizing that the only way he can get his life back is if he finds O'Neill's house and then breaks in and holds him at gunpoint or squirt gunpoint or whatever it is.
Just bought a squirt gun and spray painted it black, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But O'Neill doesn't shoot him, which is good.
Yeah.
That is
Been a
good.
much different episode.
Knowing
Who was that guy? I guess we'll never know.
I do like how they also point out this is the second week in a row that his house has been
Yep,
broken
that's
into.
right.
And Joe asks him, why don't you just lock your door?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Alarms, guard dog. Just lock your door. Yeah.
And I love the way they set up the intro to this episode where, Carter's on the phone with him and she's saying, like, what do you have next week? And he's like, oh, I've got this meeting. I can't remember if it was FBI or CIA with Johnson, which it is next week's episode, like what they're referring to is actually what's going to happen next week. And then, of course, the whole conversation with the omelet and the secret ingredient. That was gold for me.
Eggs and beer.
Because that's, O'Neill's just been grocery shopping and
beer.
in his grocery bags are eggs and beer. Yeah. Individual beers too, which I don't know, maybe
I did notice that. That was like, did you build your own flight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's cheaper that way, but O'Neill takes Joe so after all the flashbacks, O'Neill and, Joe's wife is threatened to file for divorce. O'Neill does take Joe to the SGC. And I think that's really kind of where the really funny bits happen for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because he's like fanboying out over all of them because he's so excited to meet them. We get a shout out to Jonas. Talks about how great Jonas was, but you've been there since the beginning when he meets Daniel.
Well, I don't know if he's fanboying out so much as like he's shared their lives for 7 years, and just to find out that they're like real, he's just very enthusiastic about, extending that. And so he's kind of oversharing. Like he talks to Carter and says like, now about that Pete Shanahan thing, and she demurely, kind of, and then we mentioned, he tells Teal'c that, he's not gold anymore. But before that, he just kind of walks right up to him and grabs his arm and does the whole Shalkek Nemron, I too will die free, Jaffa salute there, which is just hilarious that some
awesome.
little Nebuchadnezzar barber guy walks up to Teal'c and just does the Jaffa pledge of loyalty.
I did like before he gets to the SGC, his excitement over Daniel being alive. He's jumping up and down and whooping in the streets.
Yeah, because his wife has thrown away the stone, and so he's rooting around in the trash for it because he's just seen Daniel die, and then he gets to see Daniel come back in the ball episode, and the neighbor shaking his head in the background as he's rooting through the trash.
Yeah.
And I like that
Definitely lives.
we did get a clip that was a new clip, was when they found when SG1 was kind of going through the stuff they got from the planet with the quantum mirror, and you see Jack pick up the stone, because they had to reference that he was going to pick up the stone, because that's how it's it's like a phone or a radio. You have to have both ends for it to work.
Mhm.
And they recreated the scene. They recreated Daniel's early season hair. And I think that might have been the only new clip of Daniel. I forget, did we see Daniel in the SGC at all? Or was it just Carter and O'Neill?
I think we've seen.
No, we saw him.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, we
Okay.
saw him.
Because he told Daniel, like, I'm so happy you're back.
Oh,
nothing
yeah,
against
okay.
Jonas, but and then we get the required requisite briefing room scene. But yeah, I do like it when clip shows throw in new things as old clips, like
Yeah.
things you haven't seen before. And then they did this in Andromeda. They did a clip show, and then they like threw in scenes from an episode that they didn't air, or that, just things that just entire characters that wound up on the cutting room floor. And I remember watching it like in 2004, 2005 and being like, wait a minute, I don't remember that. Like, how do I not remember this episode? I've seen every episode of Andromeda and I don't remember this character. And I like went down a rabbit hole. I spiraled for, several weeks. No,
You turned into Joe.
yeah, pretty much. And yeah, so the wig Daniel has here isn't super convincing, but it's the one that they'll use later for Mobius. And so for continuity, they kept it here. But yeah, we do get to see Daniel in his long hair wig again.
I don't know if any of y'all have watched Community, but it has the best clip show of any
Oh, yeah.
TV show.
Yeah.
It's entirely new clips, and the whole thing is just like a parody of clip shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get more and more ridiculous as it goes along.
Yeah.
It's already a ridiculous show.
And so at the end, we get Joe finally gets reunited with his wife, who's been gone for a while at this point, and Jack O'Neill steps out in his full dress. Are they dress
Yeah.
blues in the Navy?
Or the Air Force?
Air Force? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I feel like that
Okay,
was a Father
so-
Corey question that we're
Yeah.
I know. I was just thinking,
missing.
message him real
I can
quick.
hear Father Corey right now just yelling at us from
Exactly.
the wormhole behind
You
me.
got it wrong. No.
They're not called dress blues in the Air Force. They're called sky blues.
But so he's got to come out and explain everything to Joe's wife, and
Yeah.
at this point, I feel like there's been so many like random leaks like this from the SGC. It's like
Yeah.
in this day and age of the internet, like you think all these people would end up finding each other. Like somewhere out there is young Jack O'Neill's clone. We have the guy from Wormhole Extreme. We got Joe. Just leak. But then again, you could just say they're all crazy and no one's going to listen to them anyways with what's on the internet nowadays.
Well, look at Joe trying to prove up his stories by pulling random things out of the newspaper, right? I mean, we know that those are real stories covering up all the stuff. But think about it from his wife's perspective. It's like, I'm delirious and I found all these random things to, prove that I'm not, but I really am. But then, so I thought that was a great moment because he's flipping through and he's talking about, I can't remember, like the
Russian submarine crashed when Apophis. Yeah.
For the meteor.
Yeah, she's all like, what? Stop it.
So next time you are in an awkward conversation or argument with your spouse, just step away and say, they're fighting over Antarctica to save the world.
Yeah.
That's the way
I
to
like
defuse
that. I'm going to use
And then
that
later
one.
and later they even called it back, as he said, if you ever need me to sit in the chair, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
It's like
too
those
bad they
little
hadn't-
moments that were gold in this, right?
Well, and as a fan, you're asking all these questions. You're like, okay, how come when Joe touches the stone, it activates, but nobody else did? Well, he has the ancient gene, Okay, that explains that.
Yeah.
What was the stone doing at the garage sale? Well, it was part of the pair that was found at the dig, and it paired with the alien stone from the quantum mirror planet or something. Okay, well, that makes sense, and so they do kind of explain it. And then how come he gets these summarized views? It's because he's not actually going off world to see all this stuff. He's just kind of picking up on Jack's mission briefings. And that's why none of the stories have been picked up by the science fiction magazines, is because Jack's a terrible writer. And it's like, okay.
Hell, I love that. You say none of, and they all got rejected.
Yeah. I love the way that they gave us all of that explanation without, it wasn't boring. I mean, they managed to do it in such a way you're like, oh, okay, okay, got it. Thanks.
And they answered every question that the fans were probably having as they were watching it. Like, these are the issues with this, and then here's how it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and in the beginning, when he's explaining, he's telling the first story to everyone in the barbershop, and they're like, wait, this is complicated, or this is too much, or whatever. And I thought that is every Stargate fan ever who is excited and trying to get their friends to watch it. Like, oh my gosh, there's this team. They're called SG1, and they go off world. And then there's the Goa'uld, and then there's Jaffa. And then, you know, like, you've had that moment, right? And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Is that just me?
Yeah, and I do like how they kind of like refer to the complex mythology of the show, and stuff there. Yeah, apparently the writer of this, Damian Kindler, was not, according to the commentary. Now he could just be like putting us on. It was not a Simpsons fan. Like, he had never really watched The Simpsons, and so I think that works. We do get the whole like, oh, I can see it. Burns is Gould at the end. He just threw that line in because it sounded like something a Simpsons fan would relate to or something. But I'm kind of glad he wasn't. Otherwise, we would have gotten lots of Simpsons references, I think, thrown in that would have really taken you out of the story there. Although Dan Castellaneta, who I said correctly there, was apparently very generous with his Homer Simpson impressions while on the set. So he would like get on the walkie-talkie and start talking as Homer Simpson. You know, if anybody asked him to do an impression, he would do one on the set. So that's, I think, kind of cool.
That's fun.
Nice.
Yeah. Apparently his first day of shooting, he was very nervous as well. Like, the first day of shooting was the one in Jack's house, because they have to, as I mentioned when we did Full Alert, they have to, like, the family that lives there, they have to like shoo away. So they tend to like say, okay, we're going to shoot in this house, and then we're going to shoot across the street. You know, the house with the garage sale was across the street, and they had the crane for that, and their Steadicam operator, you know, ride the crane down and do that trick again that they've done a couple times. And then when he's going through the trash, that was all basically one day. And Richard Dean Anderson shot scenes in the house for another episode that's coming up in, I think, 2 or 3 or 4 episodes in the house, like the same day while they were shooting. So it just, you know, the scheduling they have to do with the show is really impressive.
It's pretty cool.
It would be fun to own the Jack O'Neill Stargate house.
It would, yeah. You feel like
Someone should look it up. Look it up on Zillow.
Dude, I wonder how much it is.
It's probably unlocked.
Yeah. There you go. Beer in the fridge.
But no fish in the pond.
I read this.
Yeah.
I think I read this was the only clip show that doesn't have any General Hammond in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was not there at all.
And I sometimes wonder, do they pick clips? I don't know how this works with royalties or however they have to pay people. Do they pick clips based on who wrote them, who is in them, you know, showing other guest stars, yes or no? You know, I'm sure there's all kinds of rules about what, you know, they have to pay or credit or something like that. So I wonder if that kind of limits or guides them on which ones they do. Like, they mentioned Jonas, but we didn't see Jonas, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, possibly. As they were doing the commentary, they mentioned that, you know, even when they were editing, they didn't know exactly which clips they were going to use, or how much of the clips they were going to use, or what was going to be in the montage and stuff. So there may have been some of that. And at the credits for this, the ending credits do credit the actors that were in the excerpts, which I don't recall seeing before in their clip shows, but probably, you know, probably they did that before. But if they're crediting them, I think they have to, you know, pay them.
And out of 8 seasons, they have to give us 100 days. Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, that one made it?
Gotta be the tearjerker, apparently.
The tearjerker, yeah.
But they do.
Well, and then they wonder if,
Yeah, they do say, well, is she pregnant? And says, well, you have to wait for the
That's
sequel.
true.
And there's not going to be a sequel.
Yes. And that's what every fan at the time was like, why is she holding her stomach that way? What's going on? Remember?
yeah.
And so it was kind of fun that they put that. It was fun that they put that in there. I just really didn't need to see it. So
Don't ever mention it again.
yeah, that episode haunted me.
That does raise the question, is Jack O'Neill 100% honest in all his reports he writes? Like, did he write all about his romance? I feel like you kind of would have kept that on the down low.
Yeah. Yeah, you think so. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Show's
Oh, so you got
unwatchable
the
now, it's a
one
plot.
with the what was the wedding cake and the was the wedding cake? Is that what it was? With the nanites or whatever in his blood, remember? And he has a few things he could write about. So I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
I bet he writes about all of Daniel's, right?
Makes Daniels way worse.
Right.
Well, and he didn't even mention seeing Daniel when he was held by Ball. Right? He left that out on the mission report, I thought. But maybe he added it back in later.
Mm.
It's an addendum.
Yeah.
Maybe he has his mission reports he writes, and then he has his private diary, and he like puts everything in the diary, and that's what Joe was picking up on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And didn't you love how Joe proved he knew Jack O'Neill? You know, you love The Simpsons, Mary Steenburgen, and your favorite color is peridot. And you're bad at, what was it, ping pong?
Ping pong. Yeah.
Have we ever seen him play ping pong?
Yeah, he was playing with Teal'c a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
He learned how to juggle stuff really well, though.
There you go. Yeah.
It wasn't that bad at ping pong, but I guess Teal'c was just better at ping pong. Yeah.
That's what Jack said.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
We're not that bad at ping pong. No. And then when Carter walks up, it's like, what was it? I won't mention, we're not going to mention how you feel about her or something.
Oh, yeah.
It's that whole like, shh, don't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I thought it was a fun episode.
Nice
It was
call
a small
back to
dunk on
Ergo.
Pete.
Yeah.
Oh, Pete, that's right. Pete Shanahan thing, which is going to go away soon. Just saying. Yeah.
Good.
Very
And was that the same park at the end that we saw in all these episodes this season where all these every park scene happens? It looked like the same one.
Where Cassie got the dog and Pete and Carter had their date. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Got their date. Yeah.
There's no Teal'c yoga going on.
No. Apparently there's like a school there's a school adjacent to the park, and so they have to film basically before the bell rings and all the kids run out of school to use the playground. And so they can only film like in certain windows at that park.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I think of all the shows that try to do meta humor, I think Stargate does it the best.
Yeah, and Dan Castellaneta got to repay the favor by writing an episode of The Simpsons, or co-writing an episode of The Simpsons, where Richard Dean Anderson appears at a Stargate convention.
Oh, that's
nice.
And I think Patty and Selma, haven't seen it in years, but I think they kidnap him or something because, they're his biggest fans for MacGyver. That was a running joke through the early seasons of The Simpsons, was how much they loved Richard Dean Anderson and MacGyver. So,
so it was a mutual love affair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny.
Get a crossover there.
Yep.
Awesome. Do we have any other fun tidbits from the commentary?
No, but it was a good commentary to listen to, so I can recommend it. It was with the writer and then the director, Andy Makita, as well, and so
So
they weren't just talking about bathing suits like the
last
episodes.
It was actually interesting things about the sets, like how the actors interacted on set, and it was actually apparently Andy Makita has a really good Homer Simpson impression, is what I will say from listening to the commentary too.
Nice. I'll just check that out. Awesome. Did y'all have any other thoughts on this episode?
I applauded greatly when Charlene talked about how all y'all care about is like blowing things up and shooting stuff.
Yeah.
And where are the interpersonal relationships? And I was like, yeah, I think I've said that before. I think that's why so many women like Stargate, is because they did focus on not just blowing things up, but the interpersonal relationships. So that was kind of funny.
I loved her book club book too, The Heart of the Woman. Like that she has the book later, and it's like not even AI generated slop, because that's what we get now with our book covers. But you know, it's just kind of like clip art thrown together into a
Yeah.
book cover.
Very generic book club
Yeah.
book name.
Mm-hmm.
I liked at the dinner scene where it was she's talking about her book, and he's like, "I've got a story." Okay, what happened at work? No, a
Right?
story. I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there as a wife. I'm like, did you just interrupt me?
And I love how into it his son is too, like listening to the stories at the dinner table and then bedtime. That was really sweet. The
Yeah.
kid that they got to play young Andy, and older Andy too, but Alex Ferris and then later Mark Hansen was really good child actors in that role.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start telling my kids that if they go to bed on time, I'll tell them about the Ritu.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't give them nightmares.
Yeah.
No. Invisible spider aliens. Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps up our discussion of Citizen Joe. But before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secret to Stargate, including Victor P., Ben B., Brent W., Susan P., and David S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secret to Stargate and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and you can find the video versions at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. To find previous episodes of Secret to Stargate and to send us feedback, you can visit sqpn.com/Stargate, and you can email us at stargate@sqpn.com. And follow StarQuest on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or on X at SQPN. You can come join in the conversation with us on the SQPN Discord at sqpn.com/Discord. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next episode of Atlantis, Before I Sleep. Until then, Jeff Haecker, thank you for joining me and sharing the secret to Stargate.
Thanks, Jack.
And Lisa Jones, thank you as well.
Thanks, Jack.
And Victor Lambs, thank you too.
Thanks, Jack. And so the Gould won't plant more bombs in Ryak's teeth? That's right. Now go to sleep.
It's exactly the kind of question you get from a kid. And once again, I'm Jack Baruzzini. Thank you for listening to The Secret to Stargate on StarQuest.
Anyway, I'm sorry, but that just happens to be how I feel about it. What do you think?